Hi, Joel. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, how's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Can you introduce yourself and your job?
Sure. I'm Joel Crawford Smith. I'm the Web Accessibility Administrator at a university for their public facing websites.
Great. Thank you. And can you tell me a little bit about how you explain accessibility to people who maybe have never heard of it before? They don't know what you do
Yeah,
when you say that at a barbecue or wherever.
it can all come down to just being inclusive, including everyone in what you do. Providing people with disabilities equal access to the web, because I do web accessibility, but accessibility is more than just the web, but it's my expertise. But you do this ideally through universal design, which I think is a word that your UX people will really understand. Because we don't know who's coming to our websites. We don't know their abilities. So it needs to be universally ready for them before they arrive. And disabilities like having no vision or low vision, being deaf or hard of hearing, ADD, that's an impact, has an impact even, and motor impairments, having shaky hands like Parkinson's. And whenever people think of people with disabilities, people are not inherently disabled. Like, think of it as doing something, not being something. So people do not need to be disabled from using a website or an application because you can change the environment. Physical world is a good metaphor that I like to use with people because anybody will pick up on this. Think of a task like voting. Someone in a wheelchair needs to go vote. If there is no ramp into a building, then they're disabled from voting. But if there is a ramp, then they're able to vote. So there's no disability there. And then everybody loves ramps, people with strollers, people who don't have much mobility as they used to, people with temporary disabilities like a broken leg. So whenever you do something for people with a disability, everybody ends up liking it. I like digital examples. Maybe these are buzzwords people haven't heard of yet, but providing good color contrast for people with low vision, alternative text descriptions so blind screen reader users can understand an image, captioning for deaf, hard of hearing, large touch targets. That might be something the user experience people are familiar with, making buttons large enough to click or tap. So those are all digital types of things. That's accessibility in a nutshell for me. It's just being inclusive and thinking of people as not being inherently disabled.
Those are some great examples. Thank you for sharing all that, Joel. Despite your great examples, do you bump into people still who may not care as much or maybe don't prioritize accessibility as you would like? And
Yes.
how do you get them to care?
Yeah, it's a thing still for sure. It depends on who it is. Sometimes people just need to know about it. I call them the do-gooders. Once they're aware of an issue, they want to do the right thing. They want to learn how to help people. So just being aware can help a lot of people. UX people are usually pretty easy to get on board because almost everything that's good for accessibility is good for user experience for everyone. I mean, being inclusive, but also, as I mentioned, like a touch target being large enough to click, that's good for everybody. Like business people, it's an untapped market. 26% of people identify as having some type of disability. Not all of those are web related, but that's a huge market. And lawsuits are a big motivator for business people. Making things accessible is cheaper than getting out of legal trouble. Does that answer it, or?
I think it does. Yeah. I think the lawsuit thing is definitely a motivator too. But who wants it to get it to that point or to the bad press that you might receive?
Yeah, exactly. It's the carrot and the stick. Like as an accessibility person who I need to work with a lot of people and get them on board and hey, will you work on this? So it'll help people. But then if that doesn't work, then you got to get the stick out and be like, listen, it's either you fix it now or you're going to fix it later.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, everything you say. And you have been doing accessibility a long time, Joel. And And I'm curious if you
Yeah.
could talk a little bit how it's changed during your career, maybe when you got started in it, maybe even how you got started in it, and then how you've seen it change.
Yeah, well, how I got started with it was I was kind of the accessibility harpy where I worked. I was really into it and I really got other people into it. And then there became a need for a full-time web accessibility person. And since I was the main accessibility harpy, you being the subject matter expert, I got the job or earned it over time. So I try to tell people just know a little bit about web accessibility with your job, and you might be the subject matter expert because maybe no one else knows anything about it. It can open up opportunities. But I guess to your question about maybe how things have changed, everything's getting more complex with the web. There's new technology always coming out, and it gets harder and harder to fix things after they're built. That's the biggest change. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all that. Can you talk a little bit about what your day-to-day is like in your job?
Yeah, we have to make sure that new websites that launch are accessible and compliant. So I do assessments of them based on web content accessibility guidelines. They're kind of the rule set that everyone has to follow. So that can happen a lot. And then also monitoring, is the new content or functionality still compliant on a site? Checking for captioning to make sure videos are captioned, checking PDFs for accessibility, because anything on the web is web content. It needs to be accessible too. So it's a combination of new stuff and then keeping an eye on old stuff. And a lot of training. I do a ton of trainings for people.
I would imagine that it's a lot of education for a lot of different people who are creating the content.
Yeah. I do at least a training every month or more, maybe 6 in a month. It's sometimes it's one-on-one with people, and sometimes it's going to be like, just maybe 40 or 50 people that you can get together.
So this is a ripe area, it sounds like, for other people who might be interested in delving more into accessibility, because we need more education. We need more people who know about it. There's demand for training. With the rise in lawsuits, more people are aware that you need to have experts.
That's huge.
Yeah. What is frustrating to you as a professional working in this accessibility space? If anything,
people who don't care, or they just try to sneak through, like I'm going to launch this website, maybe nobody will notice, and that can happen. Just really, the frustrating thing is just people who don't want to just do it because it's the right thing to do.
I hear you. And Joel, what do people misunderstand about accessibility?
A lot of people think that making something accessible makes it ugly. Like you're limiting the design of something. But it's not really. I think that's the biggest myth, from designers. Something about think about color contrast. That's one of the things that maybe a designer might be not into. And color contrast is the color of text on top of a background color. So making things easy to read. So having a high contrast. Everybody likes to be able to read text, and nobody's impressed when they can't read the text, or text is hard to read. So making compromises actually is kind of like providing the ramp from the earlier example, that it can help everyone. So it might have a couple limitations, but overall it's for the best.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. What advice would you give to somebody just getting started with trying to make their websites or apps more accessible? Somebody watching the video might be their first kind of encounter of like, oh, I see this is important.
Yeah. If I had to tell them anything, I'd say Google WCAG. It's the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. That's where it all starts. That's the measuring stick that we use to decide if something is compliant and accessible. depending on the industry that you're in, the web content accessibility criteria might be the law actually, and you don't really have the option. You might accidentally not be doing it. So it's also sort of a double-edged sword. Like, the good part is if you follow the web content accessibility criteria, you can back up your design decisions with the law. Like, say, like the color contrast or some of the other design features, if they are compliant, and somebody doesn't like it, it's not an opinion. It's like, hey, I'm just following the rules here. That's not just an opinion. So learn the web content accessibility guidelines, and if nobody else knows it, that makes you the subject matter expert where you work.
That's right. That's right. And then it's possible too that down the line too, there will be the law for everybody. I know that the courts are mixed in terms
Yeah.
of websites being a public accommodation and apps and that sort of thing, but we shall see.
Absolutely.
It seems to be heading that way. I'm hopeful to kind of just make
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And so let's say, okay, maybe somebody's gotten to explore those guidelines. They did their Googling, and are there other places that you think have good learning around accessibility? Or
Yeah. Twitter. So the accessibility hashtag for Twitter is the least accessible thing you can think of. It's hashtag A11Y. That's accessibility. So if you follow that, you'll see all kinds of cool tips and tricks. People will post in articles. That is probably the best place. There's also a Slack channel for it too, but I'd get started in the Twitter. That'll get you really far to really dive into it.
That's a great resource. Can you explain a little bit about why it's A11Y?
Don't quote me on this, but I think accessibility is 11 letters.
I think that's my understanding too of how it ended up being.
And then everyone spells A-L-L-Y because the ones look the same. They look like L's, so it makes it even less accessible. That's what somebody chose probably 10 years ago to make it.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know. That's a great hashtag for learning.
Yeah, really, really good place to start.
Okay, cool. Nice to get little tidbits too, right? To not get overwhelmed. It seems like with accessibility, you just got to start somewhere, like start by captioning your videos.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, any small thing you do can reduce a barrier for somebody. So it doesn't have to be perfect to be better and, to be much better.
Yeah, I like that. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just keep moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Okay, Joel, we know that people have a limited cognitive load in their head. And if they can only remember one thing from our interview, what would you want them to take away about accessibility?
Making things accessible and inclusive makes things better for everyone. We're not just doing it for like a tiny minority. We're doing this for everyone. And all of the things that we implement will help. You never know who it's going to help.
I love it. That's a great message. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity.